All right, let's just jump right in. We're all using generative AI for, well, everything, right? Writing emails, putting together presentations, even just kicking around ideas. But there's this little voice in the back of my head, this nagging question underneath all that amazing efficiency. What is this stuff actually doing to our brains? Are we getting a superpowered tool to sharpen our minds? Or are we basically inventing a cure for the exercise of thinking itself? So let's kick things off by looking at what's really going on up here in our brains when we kind of switch to autopilot and, just hand the keys over to the AI. I love this quote because it hits so close to home, doesn't it? It perfectly captures this new reality for so many of us. Think about it. We've gone from being creators, staring at that blank page, to just being validators. I saw one researcher put it this way: we're becoming professional validators of our robots' opinions. Ouch. We're not building the argument from the ground up anymore. We're just checking the AI's homework. And that seemingly small shift, well, it's at the very heart of a phenomenon that scientists have a name for. It's called cognitive offloading. Now, look, this isn't a totally new idea. I mean, we've been using calculators and Google for years to offload stuff, right? But with generative AI, it's different. It's a whole other level. We're not just offloading a quick fact check or a math problem. We're offloading the entire process of thinking, the reasoning, the structuring of an argument, the synthesis of ideas. We are literally letting the tool do all the heavy lifting for us. And what happens then? Well, it creates this really strange sense of detachment. It's like we become intellectual tourists in our own work. You know the feeling. We're just passing through, kind of looking at the pretty ideas the AI has all laid out for us, but we're not really living inside them. We're not wrestling with them, struggling with them, and ultimately making them our own. So it really makes you wonder, what's the real price we're paying for all this convenience?
Well, it turns out there is a cost, and some recent studies have actually started to measure it. And let me tell you, the results are, well, they're pretty startling.
Okay, check this out. In a Korean study, researchers gave people a writing task. But here's the twist. The AI they used was intentionally designed to sneak in flawed information and biases. The results? Absolutely staggering. A whopping 85.2% of people, they didn't even notice the errors. They just accepted the flawed output and submitted it as their own. It seems like when we offload the work, we also offload our critical judgment right along with it. And it's not just about us being less critical. Our brains are literally doing less work. I mean, for real. A recent MIT study hooked students up to EEGs to measure their brain activity while they did writing assignments. And the findings were just, wow. The students using ChatGPT showed up to 55% less brain engagement compared to the ones who wrote without it. So we're not just working more efficiently, our brains are actually powering down. And that drop in engagement, it has a direct, measurable impact on your memory. That same Korean study I mentioned, they went back and asked the participants about the core argument of the essays they had just written with the AI. And get this, almost half of them, 49.5%, either couldn't remember what it was, or they just got it completely wrong. It's simple, really. If you don't do the thinking, you don't form the memory. Which brings us to this absolutely brilliant analogy. It's like we've invented a cure for exercise. Imagine taking a pill that gives you all the results of a great workout without ever setting foot in a gym. Sounds amazing, right? But you lose all the actual benefits of the exercise, the strength, the endurance, the mental resilience. We're avoiding the work of thinking, but it turns out that work was the whole point all along. Okay, but hold on. This doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. It's not necessarily a bad news story, because maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't the technology itself, but how we choose to use it. And that forces us to make a really fundamental choice about how we want to think. It's worth remembering that this kind of anxiety, it's not new, not at all. Go way back to around 400 BC, and you had Socrates worrying that writing, the written word, would destroy our ability to memorize things. Fast forward to the 1970s, and everyone was panicking that pocket calculators would mean no one could do basic math anymore. Each time, the technology didn't ruin us, it just changed how we work. So the real question isn't, is AI bad? The real question is, how are we going to adapt? And long before ChatGPT was on everyone's computer, an author named Nicholas Carr came up with the perfect metaphor for this choice. He was describing how he felt his own thinking changing from this deep, immersive engagement with ideas to something much faster, much more superficial. It's a great question to ask yourself. Are you a scuba diver exploring the depths, or are you a jet skier just zipping along the surface? I mean, that just illustrates the two modes perfectly, right? The scuba diver, that's all about deep concentration, contemplation, and real reflection. It's slow, it's deliberate. The jet skier? That's about speed. It's about skimming across a ton of things really quickly, but it's shallow. By the very nature, most AI assistants today push us to be jet skiers. But what if? What if we could actually design them to help us be better scuba divers? And that brings us to a really, really exciting idea. What if we shifted our whole mindset? What if we stopped seeing AI as just a simple assistant and started demanding that it become a true partner in our thinking process? So what's the difference really? Well, an AI assistant just obeys. It automates a task, gives you the answer, and reduces your effort. Simple. But an AI thought partner? It does the exact opposite. It challenges you. It asks you tough, probing questions. It explores different angles with you. The goal isn't just getting the job done faster. It's about getting it done better by making you think harder.
And this isn't just science fiction. Researchers at Microsoft are already building this stuff. They've got prototypes that, instead of just writing for you, they offer up what they call provocations. They give you critiques, they offer counterarguments, all to help you strengthen your own ideas. It's designed to keep you, the human, totally engaged with the material and firmly in the driver's seat. The goal isn't to replace your thinking, but to support it, to strengthen it, to basically build a scaffold around it.
So, as we start to wrap this up, the big question is, how do we actually make this shift in our own lives? Well, it all comes down to being way more mindful and deliberate about how we use these tools. It requires us to practice something called metacognition, which is just a fancy way of saying we need to start thinking about our thinking.
And here's a super practical framework you can use. It's called the CEDE protocol. First up is C for clarify. You have to define who's responsible for what. Is it you or is it the AI? Next is E for evaluate. You have to constantly be assessing what the AI gives you for accuracy, for bias, for integrity. Then comes D for document. Keep a record of your key decisions so you can actually trace your own thought process. And finally, E for escalate. Have a clear plan in place for what to do when, not if, but when, the AI makes an error. Following a protocol like this, it forces you to stay engaged and to stay accountable.
At the end of the day, all of this leads to a really profound question. It's a question that echoes throughout the entire history of technology. You know, people once asked, if books can remember for us, does it matter that we can't? And now we're asking a new version of that same question. If machines can think for us, does it matter that we cannot? The choice between being an intellectual tourist or a deep-sea diver, well, that choice is entirely up to us. So what's it going to be? Do we want tools that think for us, or do we want tools that help us think better?